Hello, hello. I want to welcome all of you to another hour of some of the stuff that is hard to find anywhere except right here on this radio station and on this show, the Universal Consciousness Show. And we are going to entertain you and hopefully educate you and maybe just open up the crack in the deeper mind on you today because we have a wonderful guest with us, one that you are going to enjoy listening to because he has done so much. His man is Dan Willis, and he is coming back. He has been here, I think, two times already over the last year or so on the Universal Consciousness Show. So I am delighted to have him here again. And for those of you that want to listen to this show again, you could go to where we archive the shows, and that is at our website at www.universal-consciousness-show and .com, of course. And also we are on Facebook and on Twitter and several other places out there where it is all placed, so you can find us. And I would make it simple this time, and because Dan has such a wonderful bio, and I would say welcome to the show, Dan. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what you want people to know.
Aage, hi. Good to
Hey,
be on
hey.
your show again. Well, I'm just one of over 500 military intelligence witnesses that was supporting letting the public know back in May 9th, 2001, the National Press Club that our legal government has been essentially infiltrated since 1955 and been denied access, and that technologies that could totally transform the world are being withheld by these illegal operations that have been keeping our planet technologically hijacked, I guess you could say. I was one of 20 witnesses that was willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing on May 9, 2001. Went before all the mainstream media. It was like 22 cameras in the back row. The trouble is that the full message that, we have extraterrestrial presence on this planet, that many species have already been categorized, that we've had technologies to get off of nuclear oil and coal, and that the ETs have a lot of concern about our nuclear weapons, have been shutting them down. NASA has been sanitizing the information now. Then they telling the astronauts to keep quiet what happened on the moon. All this was explosive testimony was revealed, but the elements that have kept us suppressed also control the corporations that control the mainstream media. And so the message didn't really fully get out to the public. So that was 17 years ago. The same elements that control the media then still control the media today.
Nothing
And
changes, huh?
yeah, and so once in a while I do a talk show, and I feel it's important that the public knows the truth about what has been going on.
But it appears to me like it's opening up a little bit. We see a lot of people. Hey, even astronauts are coming out and saying something that they saw a city on the moon and they saw ships up there and things. There's a crack in their system and things are leaking through.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? We have an embarrassment of witnesses and whistleblowers and evidence, that's coming out. But, there's a lot of people that, when they watch the evening news and they look at that trustworthy face, reading the teleprompter that's controlled by high-level CIA executives tied into think tanks that are carefully engineering our consent and our perceptions, that how we interpret what's being broadcast. It's hard. It's really, when I went to Washington, Aage, I quit, listening to all the other. My testimony was small, compared to my testimony was about, apparently we have bases deep underneath our oceans, besides being underground, that these flying discs that were glowing reddish orange coming out of our oceans and secret classified reports in the Navy, that, this is something that it stuck in my mind. This is back in 1969. I became aware of this, and that today it's a much different story, like you're saying. But in 2001, I couldn't imagine. I didn't even know what Operation Mockingbird was in 2001. I couldn't imagine all these explosive testimonies. Each one of us that stated we're willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing. It's penalty of perjury, breaking national security oaths. I couldn't imagine.
Tell them a little bit about Operation Mockingbird. Explain that one just a little bit so people can understand, because that's kind of an elusive creature out there.
Well, there was a Nazi infiltration that occurred that came into the CIA through Alan Dulles and all the assets of the Nazi cabal, I guess you could say, and that around 1950, Alan Dulles, who was the CIA director, he set up Operation Mockingbird. They started out with 400 journalists that were paid by the CIA to give information that appeared to be coming from independent sources, but it was for the sole purpose of manipulating the public's perceptions according to how they, dictated. So today we have some witnesses coming out to say they were non-official covers, that the CIA gave them information, that it supposedly, looked like it was coming from independent journalists, but if they were ever discovered, they were disavowed any knowledge that they were being given information. But it's a matrix of perception. The Nazis had this plan called Weltanschauungskrieg, which means worldview warfare, which they effectively created this matrix of perception to infiltrate in. The national, the Invention Secrecy Act, 1951. We have well over, 5,700 national security orders that have withheld technologies that could get us off of these dangerous, obsolete technologies, but they won't release them. They rewrote the history in 1946 through the Rockefeller Foundation, so all the school children, and in the future, they give what's called kind of a limited hangout. A lot of it is true about what happened, but they exclude the important parts, like the Nazis escaping, moving their corporations and things down in Antarctica. You've got the Operation Dove that went into, starting in 1951, actually the first movie that was CIA Air Force liaisons into Hollywood was The Day the Earth Stood Still. And so you've got the movie industry, you've got our education, you have inventions, you have the mainstream media. All of this, when a person is born into this reality, their perceptions are formed and created by your education, what you watch on television. And so we've got decades upon decades of this psychological warfare being done against the people of this planet.
Yeah, and I see also that there is probably some, 50, 100 different tentacles coming out from this creature. That is basically the CIA was created pretty much by the Nazis. So they moved the headquarters to Washington, the Nazis did. And it is really strange when you think about that, because that's the last thing that people would think about. The CIA is operating like a criminal syndicate, and they are doing the job with it.
Yeah, they were able to pull it off. Truman, who originally, initiated the CIA back in 1947, he said that, they don't have to account to anybody. They're doing their own thing, essentially.
Yep.
That the whole situation with them started because Truman had this fear. After World War II, we had this fear about the Soviets, and so General Reinhard Gehlen, the head of Nazi intelligence, knew this, and so they hid in the Bavarian mountains these sealed microfiche containers of all the Soviet intelligence, used it for a bargaining trip in order to bring in 3,000 Nazi spies into the CIA.
Yeah.
And then what they did was, and Allen Dulles was completely compliant with this, along with General Wild Bill Donovan, who was a former OSS that turned into the CIA. And so what they did was they started giving these false estimates of the Soviets. And so what this did, because they knew that Truman was going to shut down the CIA, and so what it did is it kept funneling money into the CIA and expanding it, and I'm sure a lot of that got, funneled into, some of the Nazi projects as well. So, yeah, we still have this beast today, and they actually broke off into their own operation. We have what's called white hats and black hats, I guess you could say. So when people say, oh, it's the government, oh, it's the CIA, or it's the NSA, NRO, or whatever, it's not necessarily, you can't just group label everybody, because there's good people in our military and in our intelligence community that know these people. I know who they are. In fact, we wouldn't have been able to go before the public, before the world media back in 2001, if it wasn't for the support from the White Hats, because Dr. Stephen Greer, who sponsored the event, he had his life threatened not to go forward. And just prior to the event, we were given the green light by the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Tom Wilson, who was shown that these operations, what they did was, in order to, this whole thing started back in the 50s with the Eisenhower administration, where Eisenhower had to get rid of the old MJ-12 group, create a new MJ-12 group with an executive order, putting Allen Dulles, of all people, as MJ-1, the head of the operations. And they restructured the whole thing, so our legal government was out of control. And ever since 1955, every president, CIA director, has been, well, most of them anyway, we know we have proof from at least 2 presidential administrations, has been denied access. So he was shown, one of the things that they use in order to keep this out of the public domain is called unacknowledged special access programs, where it doesn't matter if you're the president or the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of Intelligence, you're denied access. And so Admiral Wilson was shown this unacknowledged special access program, and he was denied access, and he said, well, hell, I don't have access. I'm the head of intelligence. And he said to Dr. Greer, and also astronaut Edgar Mitchell was there at that meeting in the Pentagon, that if you can get your people together and go before the media, you have my permission. This group is illegal, quote unquote. And so that's the line from the head of the intelligence of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and that is why I'm only one. I was like the 100th videotaped witness. My testimony was just a small fragment of the whole thing. We have over 500 100 witnesses, which include admirals, astronauts, generals, credible people, many with supporting documentation from an Office of Naval Intelligence and Air Force Office of Special Investigations that, substantiate and proves this reality. But if they control the mainstream media, the average person sitting back watching the evening news isn't going to get the full picture of what's going on. So we have a hijacked mainstream media, which is getting called out all the time. They're getting more and more obvious.
Oh, yeah. Watching TV, you're going to know about the weather and the movie stars, and you know all about them. But and now I remember we talked earlier, and you said there is another thing that is I haven't really looked into it very much, but you have, and you mentioned Q. What do you think about what's going on there? There's a lot of things coming out through those tweets and what he's talking about that I started looking into a little bit, and I said, man, oh man, this guy is sharp.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the mainstream media is calling it a crazed conspiracy, deranged cult, because what they want to do is they want to label it in such a way, such as, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, all the main channels that they control. They want to label it in such a way that the people who are reading this information are steered in such a way as like, you don't want to look into this. You don't want to see what this is really about, but what I'm getting, what Q is about is that, see, when Eisenhower basically got kind of forced into this agreement back in 1955 with the Nazis and with an extraterrestrial group and with the corporations that he lost control of, which we have, witnesses that, such as General Stephen Lufkin, who was on his staff, that knew that he lost full control to the corporations. What he did in his wisdom is to set up a secret military intelligence unit that if in the future this group ever tried to completely take over the Republic, they would become activated. And there's many signs that, this is my speculation on this particular part, but I think what happened, just 4 months after the National Press Club in May 9th, 2001, we have the 9/11 event. And when the 9/11 event happened, I think that crossed a red line in my speculation. And I think military intelligence started to, they realized that the NSA has been, their quantum computers and yottabytes of information, storing information on everybody. As William Binney said, they're not doing anything with terrorists. They're making dossiers on every individual. This was going to be used against the public. But I think what happened is the White Hats essentially know who these black hats are, have positioned themselves, have taken over control of the NSA, have now been using all that incredible surveillance capabilities, of which, Edward Snowden revealed much of that, against the cabal. And so what's happening is Q appears to be military intelligence attempting to educate the public in such a way as to put out questions and making people think and ask questions and trying to get the public up to speed that has been hoodwinked for all these decades. And what they're doing is the cabal uses our system to be used for their agenda. They have, after the 9/11 event, the Patriot Act, then they have the National Defense Authorization Act with its draconian laws and everything. All of this fits perfectly into the agenda of this infiltrated cabal, you could say. And so what happened was the military who brought Trump in as a candidate to go against the Bilderberg meeting candidate, which started back at about the same time that all this got lost, about 1954 by a former SS Nazi officer. What what they're doing is making laws. Like back in December 21st of 2017, Trump made a very, very important executive order. It was basically freezing the assets of anybody doing human rights abuse or corruption, which, anybody in the cabal is doing one or the other of those two things. And so what happened was they have used the system to identify all the cabal's assets. Now they have over 51,000 sealed indictments just sitting, waiting to be activated. The new amendments have been made to the Uniform Code of Military Justice and, for military law, which, since Trump did this executive order back in December of 2017, he declared it a national emergency. If you're in a state of national emergency, in which we have been in a state of war ever since 9/11, it's never been taken off, yep. Anybody who's doing any of these things can be tried in a military court. And it's kind of interesting, Aage, that at the exact same day that Trump did that executive order back in December of 2017, General Mattis, head of Secretary of Defense, flew down with 1,000 Marines down to Guantanamo Bay with $500 million, expanded the facilities down there. And so it looks like they're positioning themselves to do these military tribunals and bring all these people in transparently to show the world with the evidence that has been collected, that's going to be indisputable, that the world can see that these people and their agendas of what they were attempting to do to the people of this planet, and be fairly tried and then incarcerated down in Guantanamo Bay. And then once this cabal has been decapitated and is no longer active, my God, we've got thousands of national security orders of all these incredible technology in every area of science and energy generation and transportation, medicine. All these things can be released. And, and Trump kind of hinted that in his, he wrote his own inaugural speech, and he hinted that, releasing the mysteries of space and the technologies. And, it's kind of interesting that his uncle, John Trump, was the MIT scientist that went in and evaluated after Tesla passed Tesla's documents. And so he knew something, but of course, publicly he said, oh, there's nothing of any value, there. But of course he would have to say that. But, I think there is this incredible transformation that we're right on the threshold of, Aage, that we can release these technologies, and that would mean that, everybody on this planet we can do away with all these false flags of, like 9/11, like the Gulf of Tonkin. I had to go to Vietnam in combat action because of that lie after they murdered Kennedy and LBJ escalated the war. All these things where, millions of people are, homes are destroyed, and the PTSD of their soldiers, and, just all of the horrific things that happen because of these lies, these deceptions that move forward in an agenda that is hidden, that people, so long as they control the media, like, look at the 9/11 event. Look how the media was so compliant. Look how they slipped up on the BBC and CNN, how they accidentally were given the script ahead of time about Building 7. All this stuff was engineered ahead of time in order to move forward their agenda. But it looks like they are in major panic right now.
Well, it's about time that they enter there because, you mentioned BBC. That was really almost funny because the lady that was reading the news, she said that building number or tower number 7 had collapsed. and right by her, out the window, we could see the building still standing there for actually another 20 minutes before it went down.
Mm. My mother, who is French, but she lived in Argentina, she said there was an old saying that the Argentines say that the devil always forgets to put the lid back on the cookie jar, and there's always slip-ups, and there's lots and lots of as in the movie The Matrix, there's glitches in the Matrix. For anybody who has an astute awareness catches these things. And when you see these little glitches in the Matrix, it creates this cognitive dissonance. It's like you're told one thing, on your television set, yet you see these other things that completely contradict what the announcer is saying. Yeah. And so there's this little cognitive dissonance because we've been living in a lie for many decades.
Yeah, and we are about to come out of it. And
yes, we are.
Yeah, I think the people at the top of the cabal is not even on the planet. I think it goes off the planet. And I think they're starting to realize, especially the underlings at the top, they know they're going to lose this one. And there are some of them that has actually been indicated that they expect to get away. And what they're saying by getting away is getting off the planet. Could you we got 2 minutes left of the show here before the break, and could you maybe comment on that? Do you think some of them are actually trying to leave the planet?
Well, according to some witnesses, whistleblowers within the secret space programs, of which I have no direct knowledge of, they have tried, but they have been quarantined, and apparently we have some help from a different extraterrestrial race who has more of humanity's interest in mind than the predatory one that Eisenhower had to get into an agreement with the Nazis back in 1955.
Yeah, they are so far they've been in charge, and they become so arrogant about things that they just don't even care if we know. But now that is changing on both sides of the fence here. We care, and they're starting to care too, because like you said, they are panicking, and that's a good thing. And I see now we're down at the bottom of the hour, and when we come back, we'll speak some more with Dan Willis, and I think we will lighten it up a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about, we have talked about E.T., extraterrestrials, what some people call aliens, which is maybe a misnomer, but what are their mindset? What are when they look at us, what do some of them see? And we want to talk a little bit more about the consciousness that creates it all. So let's stay with us, and we'll go to break for the next 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll be back.
The L&M Radio Network offers an exciting chat room for you, the listener. Come interact with your fellow listeners and like-minded people and talk about the shows, from the paranormal to conspiracies and anything else L&M related. All you have to do is go to the lnmradionetwork.com website and click the L&M official chat page button at the top of the homepage. Then click connect and you'll be able to log in to the chat room. We're here for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the chat room is for both Studio A and Studio B. We look forward to seeing you there.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
This is Jason Bland, host of Paranormal Soup on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. And we're streaming as a webcast to our Facebook page, Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we have guests who will blow your mind, live ghost box sessions where you can call in to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern on the LNM Radio Network.
Do you own a laser printer, copier, or a fax? Well then, listen close to this announcement. Laser Technologies has been providing high-quality, frustration-free toner cartridges that are guaranteed not to harm your equipment for over 20 years. Laser Technologies will save you on your supplies with high quality and fast delivery. Savings up to 50%. Laser Technologies supplies toner, imaging drums, developer and cartridges for most of the major brands. For a price quote, send an email to service@laser-technologies.com. Include your printer make and model for your part number. Call us at 561-792-9600. That's 561-792-9600. Laser Technologies, providing 100% of the quality at a fraction of the price. 561-792-9600.
How to know if you should reach out to a friend. Your friend might be
worried, sad,
grumpy, angry,
stressed, weird, rebellious,
anxious,
antisocial, lonely,
sleeping less,
sleeping more,
eating less, eating more.
Look, there are a lot of things to watch out for, but you know your friend best. So if they're not acting themselves, why not say something? Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
Won't you stay and play with me? I'm having a tea party. It's such a lovely day to have a tea party. I'm having a tea party. I'm having a tea party. Won't you stay and play with me?
Some knowledge belongs to us and us alone. The way our girlfriends walk, the way they talk, the way they touch their hair. We hold details that only a sister can know about her girls. But what about our other girls? The ones that we carry with us every day. Can we describe them when everything's right? Can we feel when something's wrong? Our bond with our sister girls gives life. But knowing your breasts can save it. Go to knowyourgirls.org for the facts you need on breast health. That's knowyourgirls.org. Brought to you by Susan G. Coleman and the Ad Council.
Hello, and we are back with the Universal Consciousness Show, and we're talking with Dan Willis. And we have covered some of the darker side of or the truth behind the darker side of the society and government and so on. And I want to leave that one alone because that is their agenda and not necessarily mine. So I think we can leave it at that. I like to open it up to maybe a little lighter side. Let's put the white hat on. And, you know, I have seen UFOs. I have seen what I would call an extraterrestrial. And you wonder, what are they like? And what do they think about when they see or visit us? Do they have an agenda? Or what is the mindset of some of them when they come here? I know there is I think it was the Naval Intelligence that had a manual out quite a while ago already, but there were 57 different species that was listed in there as visiting Earth. They talked about their physiology, they talked about their mindsets and so on. What do you think if an ET is meeting with a human? How do you think they feel about the human?
Aage, well, it's hard to.
I know.
It's hard, because we have a certain processing power that we operate with, and these other beings have evolved without the encumberments that we have here on Earth, and their ability to connect to their higher aspect and everything. But at the core, we're all connected to the same source.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is a hard one because many different types of them may have different agendas or may have different wishes of what they want us to do. And they may think about it in us in different ways. And what do you think would happen after disclosure? Let's say the day after disclosure. What would the world be like?
Oh, I'm so looking forward to that in my lifetime. When I was younger, I used to think, before I became aware of any of this being, reality, is like, my God, if we had contact from beings that were thousands or millions of years in advance, at the time, naively, I think they could communicate on the same level that we are on. But, wow, what they could share, what they could tell us about what we are about because of their vast experience beyond what we have here on Earth, what they could teach us in science to work in harmony with the planet so that we don't create, distortions here and pollution and all the disruptions that humans do on this planet. How we could benefit from the wisdom of these races that have been down this path a long, long time ago. But I think it's important that there's somewhat of this prime directive thing, like they incurred, in Star Trek episodes, that we really need to learn on our own. We have to go through these trials and situations in order to gain and learn, because we can't have somebody else do it for us. We have to become awake and aware, and we have to take charge of our lives here on this planet, and what forces and things direct the lives here on this planet. And so, it's a good thing. I think there's as Brinsky expressed a fear of, that there's this global awakening happening. You can see it everywhere, that there is this, indeed, a global awakening happening. And we're not going to go down the old paths anymore. We're not going to repeat those mistakes.
No, there's a new timeline, and it's a very solid one because of the minds that is feeding it and fueling it. So that's not going back to the old. There's too much energy going into the new timeline. We're going to stay there. At least I am, and you are. And I think also when we look at what would happen after disclosure. Of course, we've already had disclosure, but it's being ignored. But the official disclosure, we would now have probably a tremendous anticipation. People will have hope in a different kind again. They will be looking to these beings and say, I want to learn more. What can we do? And the government, that's what people would say. And then government will say, wait a minute, they can't handle it. They try to suppress it still, but I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah, there's always the concern and danger, as in the past, where advanced races have come here and we've worshipped them as gods. Mm-hmm. And there are certain agendas that want to take the disclosure, like they... Back in November of last year, remember the Tic Tac that went across all the mainstream media, where the Navy was showing the UFO on the jet display. They're wanting to seed that in, but they're bringing it out through a lot of different ways. But they want to control the narrative in order to control the perception, because there's been a lot of human rights abuse, let's say that these things they don't want to expose. And so there is a big effort right now to control the disclosure narrative in a particular direction that hides some of these crimes against humanity while still disclosing it in such a way. But
yeah.
But, on the... go ahead. I'm sorry.
It is totally up to our imagination what can happen afterwards, I think, because there are no restrictions to possibilities anymore. Anything.
This is true.
Yeah. And the people or the entities that show up, we have... the Cabal has worked out you could call it a holographic system where they can actually show like there is UFOs in the sky, and it isn't. So that's the card, the last card about the alien, the fake alien invention. So that's what I'm kind of concerned about. The first wave or the first entities that show up in the sky, they may be just the fake ones. And then the second one, that probably would be our friend, because they will come to interfere with the fake ones.
Well, they're only masters of deception. And as you and I know, that falls away because the truth has this ability to resonate into every human being. And, it can be a path of deceptions along the way, but the deceptions will eventually be revealed, and so the human race, I think, is just tired and fed up with being manipulated, especially if what is shown on a world court, for example, of tribunals, and everything is brought out. It's interesting that, the mainstream media is obviously controlled by these corporations, which the highest level, is controlled by the intelligence communities.
Yeah.
And that there is this way to get around it. It's called the EAS, Emergency Alert System, that President Trump is going to do a test, which was supposed to be on September 20th, a few days ago, but has moved it to October 3rd, which is coming up not too soon. And when that broadcast goes out, it goes on every single cell phone, every single television channel, and everything. So this could be, I'm speculating here, this could be a way that an announcement to the public, bypassing the mainstream media's control, to get to the public. When CBS did an interview with me, I said, I'm not doing this interview unless I can say we have these scientists that have technology we can prove before an open congressional hearing that get us off of nuclear, oil, and coal with clean, non-polluting energy. They promised I could say that, but the producer afterward was quite upset that I never had this happen before, but the higher executives had me cut that part out. This is because they don't want the public to become aware that these realities exist. So they've been keeping a tight lid on it. But if they can bypass this through using the emergency broadcast system, and I used to be a broadcast engineer. I had to set this up a long time ago, back in the 70s with our radio station. I was a chief engineer for the most powerful FM station on the West Coast. And, this way everybody could get a message, but, my God, it would have to be psychologically engineered, because the public has been pitted against each other. Speaking of consciousness, the media, you look at all the information that our entertainment industry does with all the violence. Everybody's got a gun, everybody's shooting people, and you've got apocalyptic movies of the end of the thing. And all this dark imagery goes into the subconscious minds of many people. It even goes back to the Nazis. Heinrich Himmler up in the Welsburg Castle used to take 12 of his most psychically adept SS members, and they would do like group visualizations, in order to move forth, the agenda of the Third Reich. Basically, we have access to the same thing. It's kind of like dark magic versus white magic. I prefer to see something that is for the good of all humanity, and to visualize something that transformed the world in such a way that the world no longer becomes this pain and suffering and people struggling with money and and people without homes or food to eat, and the homeless people and all this. This whole world could be transformed to a paradise on earth through consciousness.
Yeah. And the consciousness of the people, that is also a reflection of the consciousness, the universal consciousness, because that is raising also. Maybe you could speak on that universal consciousness a little bit, how that affects us.
Well, we are all tied in, as science is showing in the leading edges of science, that each one of us is like a fractal of a larger group mind, or universal consciousness that's tied into even larger, group mind. That as science shows, that you make any changes to a hologram, any part of it affects every part of the hologram. And science has shown that there's such a thing as morphogenic fields, and that people before the internet, you'd have inventions and ideas, and people on the other side of the planet would pick it up. It's reflected into animals and birds and bees. They all have this collective mind, which is quite evident. People can see that. And the human race is no different. So if any one thing that's profound, speaking of consciousness and different higher frequencies affecting lower frequencies, is, some of the work I did with Dr. Marcel Vogel. There's one thing Dr. Vogel used to say to me that always stuck in my head. He said, these sciences that he said he was IBM's head scientist. This is a little background on him. He invented the color phosphors, red and blue, for color television. He invented the coding on hard drives. He liquid crystals. He had 140 patents with IBM. He was their top scientist, and afterward, because of spiritual experiences that he had working with plants and things, he opened up a laboratory which I helped assist with. And what he used to say to me is that these laws that we're studying, these new sciences, are akin to those that we already know in the regular physical sciences that are, taught in school and things. And so one of the things that he was working with, well, two things we were studying. We're studying water and how it is affected by mind and consciousness. And we're also studying the substance of quartz crystals, and how that interface with consciousness.
Yeah,
and
we got 2 minutes left of the show here, Dan. It's getting short on us.
Oh, okay. That was quick. Okay. What he was able to do is take a drop of water, a few drops from a sacred spring of a high vibrational content, put it into a big vat of bulk unstructured water, and that little bit of water patterned and structured the whole vat of water. Consciousness is similar.
Yeah.
And, that's what I want to say, is that if you put into a structured vat a little couple of drops of unstructured, depatterned water, what happens is that the structured water becomes patterned with a higher vibration. So the bottom line of this is that the higher frequencies trump the lower frequencies.
Yeah.
No pun intended, on that.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And where can people, now you got a website, why don't you tell people about what you have on there a little bit too for the last minute here?
Oh, marcelvogel.org is the lab notes on all of that with Marcel Vogel. And thewebmatrix.net is my notes I've been taking ever since the company wanted me to write about being an ex-ABC newsman, about media control in regards to who controls the agreed-upon reality through the mainstream media and why they fear disclosing the truth about the extraterrestrial reality. And it's kind of a chronological from the year 1900 to present day.
Yeah, I've been there, and that's very interesting, the stuff you have on there. I think that everybody should take a little time and read. Because you got to remember, readers are leaders, and each one of us has to become a leader in our own life. And it goes back to we got to control our mind, because if we do not, someone else will control it, and they may be controlling it for their purpose and not necessarily for ours. So it gets complicated. Well, thank you very much, Dan, for being with us for this hour. It was wonderful, as usual. And I think in a little while there's so much more to talk about. I'm going to see if I can get you to come back.
Oh, my pleasure. I thought we were doing a 2-hour show. There was so much more to talk about.
Oh,
and,
yeah. We're 1 hour this time, so we will go and do this again. Thank you very much, and until next week, stay tuned with us and take care of each other.